Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm Ian Croll, and sat next to me is Chris Beesley. Joining us very soon is Joe Thomas, and today is the day that the Premier League 2024-2025 fixtures are released. Chris, we've gone live 10 minutes roughly before the embargo of 9 a.m. Do you still get the excitement of... in your belly of the, first day fixtures and whether we're home or away?
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, it's the same every year. Those fixtures you look for, where they're starting, when are the derbies, where to go Boxing Day, New Year's, although there's not a New Year's fixture as such this year. And then, obviously, it's final game season. But this year, of course, is extra special. It's a once-in-a-lifetime for all of us. It is the final season at Goodison Park. English football's first purpose-built ground, most top-flight fixture of any ground, and we'll get to see. Well, you and I see, but obviously we can't say until 9 a.m. Just what that final Goodison Park fixture will be, and I'm sure that's one that all Evertonians are looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are live on YouTube, so get your questions in, get your comments in, get your thoughts in. What do you want the first game to be? Do you want it to be home or away? What do you want the last game to be? Do you want it to be home or away? What are you hoping for, or Chris, or what were you hoping for? I mean, I suppose it's a difficult one to answer now that we know, but obviously we are on a strict embargo that we can't break until we can't launch until 9 a.m.
We had a bit of fun with this. To be fair, we did a piece last night, and when we asked, what would you like the final Goodison Park fixture to be? Matt Jones, bit of a wild shout. He said Manchester United. I'm not too sure why he said that. He seemed to think that was a big name, but a not so good side. But I'm not too sure about that one, given their recent record against Everton. I went for Nottingham Forest because it was actually Everton's first ever league game at Goodison Park back in 1892. No, I wasn't there, but Nottingham Forest, so I went for that. And then Joe went for Aston Villa, which is interesting, of course, because it's the most played top-flight fixture, so he went for Villa. Whether any of us will have got that, we'll find out soon enough. But, yeah, 3 interesting choices there for the final game at Goodison.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't sure of this, because I know in the past that... Everton have put special requests in for specific fixtures. I remember a couple of seasons ago. I can't remember what the reason was. I'm sure it was something to do with 100 years in the Premier League or 100 years in top flight or something like that. We asked the Premier League if we could play Villa at home first. Yeah. Can the Premier League, accept requests? Obviously, it would be nice if we were at home for the final game of the season, but we don't know what the Premier League are obviously going to do.
Yeah, they can do, and I know that they have done. Joe, as we speak, is writing an article on that.
So Everton have put
about a request. I can't say any more at this stage, but yes, Everton made a specific request, and Joe is writing an article on that, which will obviously be up in due course.
Okay, well, we're about 6 minutes away from the 9 a.m. embargo. There's a lot going on, Chris, at Everton at this moment in time. So there's a lot to speak about. Obviously, the Premier League fixtures are the main talking point today. One theme or talking point that we haven't really spoke about of late, because it's kind of been on the back burner, is Sean Dyche's immediate future. Yeah. Going into the final season at Goodison Park, he actually only has 1 year left on his contract. Is that a little bit of a concern going into the final game? Do you think that needs addressing as sooner rather than later? We know new owners are hopefully going to come in sooner rather than later. I just don't think it's an ideal place to be, knowing that your manager, the person who's in charge, is his long-term future is not set.
Yeah. Personally, I myself, we've gone over this a few times. I'd be happy to hand him a long-term deal, but I think whenever new owners come in, whether you're a good manager, bad manager, or indifferent, I think there is always a chance that they will look towards somebody else. So I would imagine, his position is secure at the moment. But when once a new owner is in there, I mean, all better off, I guess. And Yeah, I mean, I'd love to have that stability. You know, 8 managers in 8 years, and going into the move to the new stadium, you want to have that stability and a project that people can get behind. We all know it's a different time for a discussion for a different day about what we think about Sean Dyche or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I'd like that. But I think that because you got a new owner, whoever was the manager of Everton at the point when Farhad Moshiri eventually does sell his shares. Obviously, he tried back in September to do it to 777. Spent 8.5 months negotiating with them, and they couldn't get that one over the line. So yeah, the new owner would have their own ideas, whether that ends up being Dan Friedkin or not. He's a man who's hired and fired Jose Mourinho. So yeah, I mean, it's not ideal, but I think it is what it is in terms of the turmoil that's surrounded the club, and you can't really ever get too far ahead of yourself at Everton in recent times.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think from my point of view, as a player, you want security. Obviously personal security. You want club security and stuff like that. Is there a case to be made, even if new owners don't come in within the next couple of months, that someone, whoever's in charge, I'm obviously looking at Thelwell, at least offer him another 1 year rolling contract, just to get that little bit of security that, great, the manager's going to stay. You look at the players like Coleman signing up to a new deal. There's reports of obviously Ashley Young doing the same thing as well. But you've also got players who are potentially outgoings. Branthwaite, we obviously want him to stay. Anana, Geordie's still out on him for me. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I'd love him to stay. Yeah. That must be playing in their minds as well, that they want the manager at least for the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what I like to. I think he's earned it, and take them to the new stadium, like you say, and what's been a period of great flux, and you just want to have that stability now. But I just think the way it is with the takeover, I mean, what could happen is, and hopefully whether it's Friedkin or somebody else, that it gets sorted a lot quicker than we've had with 777 when it went on and on. If it was Friedkin, perhaps it could be done by October, and then you could sort of at least take a look of it before you even get towards the midpoint of this season. And you're talking about obviously the change of the calendar year and contracts expiring, etc., stuff like that with players. So that might actually work out well. That it would still be relatively soon in the season, and the new owner could assess their options then. I mean, it's been no secret about my thoughts on Sean Dyche. I personally think he's the best fit for Everton since David Moyes, but others I've seen don't necessarily share that same opinion. Obviously, if it wasn't for the points deduction, they'd have finished level on points with Brighton and 11th for last season, and considering they came into that what was like the club's lowest ever points total the year before, I mean that was a great showing in, albeit in a bit of a sort of boom and bust with results in terms of the record-breaking winless run and then the surge towards the end. But yeah, that's what I'd like to see. But I think it probably won't get sorted until there's a new owner in place.
Okay, well, I reckon it's seconds away from 9 a.m. and we are live, so we can.
I've got a couple of buttons to press.
Chris is obviously working away as well, uploading to our website and publishing to our website. But what I'm going to do is, I've got a graphic that when it hits 9, we are 9 o'clock now, so we can reveal. There we go. They are the fixtures if you are watching live on YouTube. I hope you can see them on the graphic that we have put up on the screen. So for those listening, Chris, rather than watching, do you want to reveal?
In the dark.
Do you want to reveal the bad news?
Well, we'll start off with the first game at the season. That's Brighton and Hove Albion at home. Obviously, they're under the new manager, and the final game at Goodison Park will be Southampton, and it is not the final game of the season. It's the penultimate week, and we were sort of alluding to this before. Joe has done an article on this to explain that. At the moment, I can't say any more than that until obviously we know that one's been published, but that is due to a request from Everton. I won't say any more at the moment than that. So yeah, start off at Brighton for the start of the season.
17th of August.
Yeah, 17th of August.
Absolutely devastating for me, Chris. Sorry to interrupt, because I am away. I was hoping for an away game for it to start off with, but yeah, go on, carry on.
Missing out there. and then there's the trip to Tottenham Hotspur, and a home game against Bournemouth before you actually get to the end of the first month of the season and the first international break. What will be the final Goodison Park derby that's currently penciled in for the 7th of December. So again, as often happens, that didn't actually last season, but first derby of the season is at Goodison for what will be Everton's last trip across the park, as it were, because obviously any more future derbies will be coming. They'll be obviously going 2 miles from Bramley Moor Dock, but their last trip across Stanley Park in the traditional sense will be on. It's currently a midweek one, actually, April the 2nd, and they finished the campaign up at St James's Park against Newcastle United, 25th of May. I think people have already pointed out that I think they always seem to have one of these runs in a season where it looks perhaps a bit tougher than other times, and there's another one of those in December. You've got Liverpool at home in December, then Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, Manchester City away. So that's obviously, and with the final one of those actually being the Boxing Day fixture at the Etihad Stadium. Now these things can pan out. We thought Everton had a tough time last December. They ended up winning 4 in a row, but yeah, they're obviously very interesting to see those for the first time.
Yeah, let's look at key dates then. I suppose let's start at the end, really.
Yeah.
I think many, if not everyone, was hoping for a final game at Goodison Park, final game of the season at Goodison Park. Mm-hmm. It's not to be. It's Newcastle away.
Yeah.
4 p.m. kickoff time, which is obviously I assume that's going to be
the standard, isn't it?
Yeah, standard Sunday, late, evening time.
Yeah.
I can't hide the fact, Chris, that I am a little bit disappointed with that. Certainly if the fact that if you say that is true, that Everton have put a request in that, one of the longest serving teams in the in English football history, and we put a request in and it's being declined. I just don't see any reason why it should be declined.
I can't say any more at the moment. There's an explanation behind that. It's perhaps not what you're thinking in that respect. So just
no, I'm not accusing
piece.
The Premier League of anything. I just think I am a little bit disappointed. But I think in my mind, we've had 2 very difficult relegation battles over the past 2 seasons. We're hoping for a much improved season. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we're going to go and challenge for Europe or anything like that, but you do have in the back of your mind that is a bit of a tough fixture for the final day, regardless of what anyone thinks. Newcastle away, you would probably know better. We'd have to look it up, but the form guard against Newcastle, we did draw there last season, but I think we got, if I remember rightly, only a couple of months ago, we did get battered, and then we did come back with a late flurry, didn't we? In the the last 15 minutes.
The VAR
or so.
decision as well, wasn't it? Proved pivotal because Newcastle would have gone 2-0 up, but obviously Everton were able to come back with that late penalty.
Yeah. Okay. Well, some comments coming in, so I'll just read them out as we I'll let you carry on with your work. So. Jesse Drury says, "Don't we get Man City every Boxing Day?"
I feel like that was one of the one a couple of seasons ago was on New Year's Eve, wasn't it? I remember. To be fair, Everton nicked a point there. It was a Damari Gray wonder goal, but I'm going to have a look at that later on. Some of these fixture quirks, like we say, it wasn't the case last season, but it always seems to be the case more often than not that the Goodison derby comes first. One thing I've also spotted. You've got the 3 trips to the South Coast now, Southampton, Brighton and Bournemouth. You probably want to be doing those in nice weather, and I think you got 2 of them in January and 1 in November, so no holidays there for Sean Dyche's men.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's always, I think you mentioned there is always a period of the season where it is a bit of a tough run. Funnily enough, I think Everton managed the tough run last season quite well, against the odds probably, and probably drop points where you would expect us to pick them up. So I'm just looking through the fixtures now. It does look like a bit of a dreaded December for us, really. It starts with, you've got Wolves at home on the 3rd, obviously subject to change, but then we go straight into Liverpool on the 7th of December, then Arsenal on the 14th of December, Chelsea on the 21st of December, and obviously, as mentioned, Manchester City on the 26th of December, which is Boxing Day. That is basically a horrendous run, if I say so myself. Like,
Yeah, it's tough. It's obviously tough sides. I think last season, obviously they had Chelsea in there and obviously Newcastle, but they were both at home, and so it looked like a daunting run, didn't it? As such, and although they weren't maybe the sort of calibre of sides that perhaps that we've got in this particular run coming up. Yeah, it doesn't. Things don't always work out like that, don't they? Yeah, you've got. We were talking about this before, saying, "Oh, you got to play everyone at home, everyone away." It sounds like simple, but yeah, it is. I think the order of fixtures can play their part in gaining momentum or not, as the case may be, and it's always tough in December, especially for a club like Everton, who are likely again to have a smaller squad in terms of numbers and strength and depth. It can always test you throughout that busy festive period. Yeah. So yeah, it is. It's a daunting looking month. But I tell you one thing: I'd rather have to go through them sort of fixtures in December than perhaps having to do them in April or May.
Well, April doesn't look too good, to be honest, Chris. I don't know if you've looked at them. So
Okay,
we'll jump straight to April. And so from the 2nd of April, we've got Liverpool away.
Yeah.
From the 5th of April, we've got Arsenal at home. Then in between, following on from that, we've got Nottingham Forest away, which is on the 12th of April. And then we've got Manchester City at home on the 19th of April. And then, I'm not even finished, we've got Chelsea away on the 26th. So you could even say that might even be worse, because we've got probably a tough away game to Nottingham Forest, who could potentially be a relegation rival, stuck in the middle of those. So it could be a period of the seasons where it's like literally defined on whether we're going to pick up points or not.
Yeah, so this is a tough one. Obviously, ending with was the trip to Stamford Bridge, which we all know was by far the low point of last season. Joe and I were down there on the Monday night, and whatever could go wrong did go wrong, not just in terms of they've picked up several injuries, but you have to see just in the performance. Absolutely hit for six in the end, weren't they? And which is very unlike whatever you think of Sean Dyche. He doesn't tend to have teams who sort of capitulate in that manner. And I remember speaking to James Tarkowski in the tunnel afterwards, and he felt they let everyone down, which they did. Thankfully, they responded with that incredible run after that, didn't they? They had the 3 wins to secure their Premier League status. So maybe that's the case again. Hopefully it won't be a repeat of that 6-0. But if it is a tough run in April, maybe they could redeem themselves with those early May fixtures. Of course, they got themselves safe before we went into May, thankfully. This year, it's like I said. I mean, there are a couple of runs like that, and you look at them, but. It's funny how you think that now, looking at the fixtures in mid-June, you don't know what's going to transpire in those months ahead in terms of personnel and form, and potentially even changes of managers at clubs and things like that. So come April, who knows where we could be up to by then.
Yeah, it's a long way to go, isn't it? Obviously, we haven't kicked the ball yet. I'm just a pessimistic, unfortunately, and it's just being brought up as an Evertonian from a very young age. I mean, Chris, here's me moaning and complaining that we've got Newcastle away for the last game, and it's not at Goodison Park. And to be fair, Southampton at home for the final game, it's not the worst, is it? I think if you were looking at it was going to be like a Chelsea, a United, Arsenal. I mean, there's Emma EFC always comments on our live stream, says as long as it's not Liverpool. She didn't refer to them as Liverpool, she referred to them as something else. But yeah, I think if I'm going to be honest, I'm quite happy with the final home game opposition. I'm just a bit gutted that it's not the final game of the season. But what does it? Everything could be finished by then. We could be safe. We could, be sitting mid-table. We could be challenging for Europe. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any rules over fixtures, but there seems to be some sort of agreement, don't you? You never finish with a derby match. Maybe someone like Gav Buckland could scar the records and tell me that once. I'm sure there's never been a season finished with a Merseyside derby. Obviously, it's going to be different if you're a London club. There's always a chance you might get another London side, I guess. But no, you're never going to finish with Merseyside derby. So that was I think that was a nightmare scenario we were never going to experience. And as terms of whether it's the penultimate weekend or the final weekend for Goodison's final fixture. To be fair, we be careful here. Don't want people sort of saying don't say that, Chris, or whatever. But it is a more favourable kind of fixture in terms of you want to finish after 133 years at the grand old lady with a win. Hopefully, whoever Everton were playing, they will be spurred on by the occasion to go and get the 3 points. But you've got to hope. I mean, off the top of my head, I think they've got a pretty decent record at home to Southampton. It's probably one of the Premier League fixtures in terms of points per game, which is one of their biggest. I remember that they also played Southampton at home. It was the first game after crowds came back en masse after COVID. First game of the 21-22. That was very different because, of course, it was first game for Rafael Benitez, and we know how that ended. But yeah, that was a big moment against Southampton. It's going to be a much larger one this time round, and obviously it's going to be very emotional for Everton. It will be a great day as well. I mean, for all of us, looking forward to the move, but obviously a very poignant one. But in terms of if you could pick an opponent, that probably would have been one of the favourable ones in terms of you'd hope that Everton would finish with a win.
Absolutely. Well, if you're just joining us, we are live on YouTube, so continue to get your comments and your questions and your opinions in. It's me and Chris at this moment in time. Joe Thomas is hopefully going to join us, but we just wanted to go live as the fixture embargo passed, which we've done. And as you can see on the graphic, if you're watching live on YouTube, you can see those fixtures in full with the dates obviously subject to change. The 38 games of the Premier League season. Sticking with the kind of promoted teams then, Chris.
Yeah.
We obviously talked about Southampton. We've got Ipswich, Southampton, and
Leicester came back up, didn't they?
champions, I forgot. So, what do you make of them? If we're being realistic, let's stick with them as maybe probably the closest relegation rivals. It's probably going to be a tough one for Ipswich. Would you see them as like the Luton of last season potentially? Leicester have got experience in the Premier League. They've just lost their manager.
Yeah.
Good players maybe have to sell. Southampton again, experience in the Premier League. But what do you make of those three?
Yeah, I mean the three probably very different scenarios. Both Leicester City and Southampton obviously come straight back up after getting relegated 12 months earlier. But as you say, Leicester City have just lost their manager, which will be a crushing blow to them. And the way they were playing, and they've got to start again in that respect. Whereas Southampton have got the continuity. Okay, Leicester came up as champions, and Southampton only came through the playoffs, beating Leeds United at Wembley. But they've obviously got the manager still in place, so quite different sort of setups for them. And also you've got to remember with Leicester City, we think Everton have still got PSR issues on the horizon and not stuff to be resolved. Well, Leicester City looks like they've got a serious chance here, I think, as I understand, of a points deduction coming their way. Now they're back in the Premier League in terms of profit and sustainability. So that combined with the change in the dugout could put them on the back foot from the start. They're probably, in terms of resources and record over recent years, obviously they've won the Premier League and the FA Cup over the last decade. By far the most successful of those clubs, and far more successful than Everton as well in that period. So they've got the great resources, but they've very much been put on the back foot by those off the field issues in terms of the manager going, and like I said, the PSR issues. Ipswich Town will be a very interesting one because back-to-back promotions. I'm trying to think, it's possibly the first time a team done that, got into the Premier League since Southampton quite a few years ago. They'll have had a major boost with their manager staying. FC, given that incredible run that he's had with them the last couple of seasons. FC, he's only a young manager as well. A lot of admiring glances coming his direction over the summer, and there was talk that he might be leaving, so that's a massive boost for him to stay and at least try and keep them in the Premier League. I think probably we don't want to talk too much about Liverpool on the Royal Blue podcast, but the Reds going to Portman Road, first game of the season. I wouldn't have fancied that for Everton. That's when you don't want to be playing those newly promoted sides, when the tails are up. First day of the season, first Premier League game in whatever, how many years, 20 or whatever, for Ipswich Town. And I wouldn't have fancied that. Everton going down there to Suffolk, the long trip down to Suffolk in October, I believe. So you've got to hope possibly there maybe a few sobering results, and possibly if a few injuries might have been picked up by then for Ipswich. But yeah, you don't want to be going there opening day of the season. Really don't know what to expect. They're certainly a side on the up, but like Luton's, we saw with Luton last season, they were very game. In fact, you obviously beat Everton twice, including the FA Cup game. Sort of a team who'd be up and at you, but ultimately lacking in quality. And perhaps you might see a bit of that with Ipswich, given that they've come up 2 divisions in 2 seasons. A well organised outfit. He's got them playing good football, but it's a big step up to the Premier League, especially when you've been playing League One football just over 12 months earlier. But what I would probably say overall is that it might be a tougher division. The standard at the bottom might be higher than it was last season, because it was a particularly low sort of points total there with Sheffield United, Burnley and Luton Town.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one thing that we've got to be mindful of how low the points total was and how poor certain teams were, losing, game after game. And Everton, obviously, we're not one of those. We went in 13 games without a win.
Yeah.
Certainly, it was not a good period of time, certainly at the beginning of the year, but we got through it. We had a fantastic period, didn't we? Or we had a fantastic week, I suppose, where we were, Sean Dyche managed to get the club out of the mire.
Yeah.
Let's have a little bit of levity, Chris. So Emma EFC says, what's Chris got on his butties today? Hopefully he's had his breakfast so we can get through the pod.
Yeah, I'm all right on this early one. It's those ones around 12 noon when Joe's answering a question and I don't get up, not able to speak for about 20 minutes. That's when I'm struggling. I don't know yet.
You don't know what you've got?
I'm going to reveal. It'll be like the fixtures. I'm waiting until it gets revealed. It's probably going to see now that you're going to find out that I'm not actually making those butties.
Is it your missus making your butties?
That's the thing. So it'll be just like the fixtures. I'll open them up and wait and see what I've got.
Oh, Chloe's too good for you. Too good for you. Let's move on to the away game topic, Chris, because to be honest, you and Joe, pretty much go every single week. There is a couple of long trips for you two this season. Let's look at them. Southampton back in the league. We can name all the London clubs. We've got Bournemouth. Probably the most awkward one that it's going to be is Ipswich, isn't it?
Yeah, we mentioned that. Yeah, in October. We're looking forward to that. To be fair. It's the only one of the current 20 that both Joe and I haven't been to, and so for quite a few Evertonians as well. Obviously, the older ones might have had a few trips down there to the Tractor Boys, Portman Road, but yeah, perhaps another one to tick off for a lot of us. It's a very southern-based division, which isn't good. I mean, if you look at it, actually, other than the mega rich clubs, Everton are the only northern team in the Premier League now, because you look obviously across the park, Liverpool, they're well back, the 2 Manchester clubs, and Newcastle United, all mega money, and there's not a single team from Yorkshire in the top flight at the moment, and you only have to go back, I don't know how long ago it was, about maybe a decade or so, and we had like 8 teams in the northwest alone. You had Wigan, Bolton, Blackburn, Burnley sometimes, Blackpool, teams like that, and then only Stoke City, who was only an hour away. So you probably had like 8, maybe about 8 away days. We could get back to Merseyside within the hour, whereas now, and we're looking at all those away trips. Other than the derby, and then obviously an hour to both the Manchester sides. You're talking 2 hours down to Birmingham for Villa, or down to Wolverhampton Wanderers. The East Midlands, Forest and Leicester, that's a good 2.5, 3. Newcastle, 3 hours. The London clubs, is there about 8 of those? The 3 South Coast clubs. And then old Ipswich down there in East Anglia. So it's sort of the geography of the divisions obviously switched a lot further south in recent times. I mean, you can go into the politics of that. And is it the decline of the north under the Tory government? We could well have a change now. Don't go into politics here before the start of the new season. But yeah, in terms of the travel for the Evertonians, there's a lot of miles going to be racked up there in what is obviously still a cost of living crisis, and a lot of trips. Obviously, it's maybe a bit more scope for for the thirsty fans on those away days, get a few more drinks in. But yeah, it's a lot of travelling ahead.
Yeah, I mean, one thing's for certain on that though, Chris. Everton will be well backed when we go away. I think, pretty much, not even pretty much, it does sell out every single away day. It can be quite difficult to get hold of an away ticket, but if there's one going, if there's a spare going, it's going to be snapped up immediately. We've got an observation or an opinion from D Brass Monkey.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on this one? Because he said one thing is for sure, we need to be safe before the last 9 games. Oof. What a run-in. Premier League trying to beat the closed doors. Well, yeah, I won't read that last sentence, but it just says we need to be safe before the final 9 games. So
well, I'm not too sure about that. With a full quarter of the season to go, I'd love to think that, but
that starts with the run-in of Liverpool on the 2nd of April. I mean, to be honest, Chris, it is a very tough run-in.
Well, maybe the flip side of that for you and Brass Monkey or whoever it was would be that you'd hope that maybe to get the points on board earlier on, and if they are in a secure position, I mean that was kind of what happened in a way last season, because obviously it was that wretched run after they've culminated with the 4 victories in a row at Burnley, with Sean Dyche going back to Turf Moor and winning easily, comfortably, whatever it was, December the 16th, and then you had that awful record-breaking winless run. But the fact that Everton's heads never dropped below water during that point, you kept thinking, could Luton pick up a point here or there or a win or whatever, and you think, it could be in trouble there. No, we could be in trouble there because Joe Thomas just arrived.
Joe Thomas has just walked in the studio.
The fact that they've been so good in the earlier part of the season, obviously you got those 3 wins in London in the autumn, and they got the points on the board, meant they could afford to have that sort of fallow period later on in the season, and it didn't actually finish them off. So hopefully to Brass Monkey, if it is a tough finish to the season, it will have meant that they've got the points on the board earlier. Let's hope so.
Yeah, Joe, absolutely perfect timing. We know you're busy. Chris has been working away there while I've been hosting. We've got the fixtures, the full fixture list up as a graphic on our screen. Your initial reaction to, well, probably let's go with the first game.
Well, I'll tell you, have you done why the last game of the season's not good?
No, I've had to round him off with that one.
There's a lot of comments on that. A lot of people gutted, myself included.
Are you happy if I start with that?
So yeah, Joe's. If you're watching, if you're listening, Joe is going to explain that there is a reason why the final game of the season is not at Goodison Park. Go
so you started there by asking me what my reaction was to and your first question was first game of the season. Mine was last night. This morning I was really hopeful. That I was thinking, I just hope the last game of the season's at Goodison Park. That was the obvious thing for me, get the send-off last day of the season, summer sunshine and all that. And I must admit, obviously, we got the fixtures a couple of hours ago. We get them embargoed, can't release them until 9 o'clock, etc. But the first thing that stood out to me was the fact that Southampton at home was the penultimate game of the season, not the final game of the season. I was a bit gutted. But anyway, made some inquiries and actually found out the reason for it. And to be honest, I think it actually makes good sense. So my understanding is, and there are rumours to the contrary, but those rumours are wrong, Everton actually requested for the final game at Goodison Park to not be on the last day of the season. So they submitted that request to the Premier League. The reason being that they're desperate, essentially, for Goodison Park to get the send-off that it deserves. Now, if you look back on the final game last season, it's been like this for a while. Every single game is played at exactly the same time, kicks off at the same time, the same day. We had it last time. It's normally 4 o'clock on the Sunday. This time it'll be 4 o'clock on Sunday, the May 25th. So the danger that you have then is if Everton's last game at Goodison is one of those 10, then you're just going to get attention split across the whole of the footballing spectrum. Last game of the season, you have multiple games broadcast. I think there were 3 or 4 games broadcast at the same time on the final day of last season. You have the danger of Everton's final game, which I think is a historic moment for all of English football, not just for Everton and Everton supporters. You have the danger of it then being basically attention being split or it being upended by promotion battle, the battle for the title if it goes to the final day of the season, battle for relegation if that goes for the final season. So you've got all these competing narratives that are just going to suck away the life and the attention of the wider footballing world from Everton, of course, unless Everton are involved in one of them. Hopefully at the top end, qualifying for Europe and
We did say that,
and things like that. So I mean, so that's part of the plan. So what their hope is as a result of doing it this way, what they'll be able to ensure now is the final game at Goodison will take place over what's essentially a bit more of a normal weekend, where you have fixtures that are dotted throughout the weekend, and you don't end up in a situation where it's clashing with other games. So it should be what they're hoping for, and surely the TV, whoever broadcasts it, whether it be Sky or whether it be TNT, will be behind this. What they're hoping is that they'll get a standalone spectacle where it's front and center of everything. It's the big storyline of that day, of that weekend. The cameras of the world are there, the reporters are all there, because they're not competing with other storylines. And when you look at it along those lines, I actually think that, you know what, one, I think that makes sense, and two, I actually think that's some pretty decent foresight from the club, to be thinking along those lines. And I think it probably shows just the level of care that they're taking as they try to plan things around, giving this famous stadium a proper send-off after 133 years of football. So just to reiterate there, I understand the disappointment, because I felt it too when I saw that Everton's final game of the season wouldn't be at home, but it's a club request, and it's a club request as part of efforts to try and make sure that it gets the eyes of the footballing world on it, which I think is appropriate, because I think the eyes of the footballing world should be on Goodison on the last day of its 133 years, whenever or wherever that is. But I think we all understand that if it's at 4 o'clock on the last Sunday of the season with everything else going on, chances are that there are going to be other storylines they're competing with it. So,
has he won you over with that?
Well, we'll come back to Joe for his reaction on the rest of the fixtures, but I want to come to you then, Chris, because is that the first time you've heard that?
I knew that.
You knew that? Yeah. Okay, well, if you want to go into what's your thoughts? I'm still a bit disappointed, to be honest.
No, I get it. Joe, all of us probably initially thought, let's finish at Goodison, the last day of the season. But when you do think about it, personally, I am won over by that argument. I think it is a persuasive argument, and it shows why they've done it. There's a certain amount of logic into that, and to be fair, as Joe says, if you're on the last day, perhaps you just become an afterthought to the title race or the relegation battle, which, like I say, hopefully Everton aren't involved in the latter. And if it is the penultimate weekend, you as Joe says, give it the prominence that it deserves as in its own time slot, presumably with no other games going on at that particular time. I mean, let's hope not. We sort of discussed this earlier and saying that there's always a chance you might fit in a midweek fixture before the final game of the season. Hopefully that isn't the case. With the way this has been planned and the thinking behind it, that doesn't end up happening to scupper their plans in that respect. But yeah, it does. Despite our initial disappointment, if you think about the reasons behind it and why it's been done, I'm to be fair, I'm convinced by that argument, and seems like a decent idea if we think about it personally. Despite the disappointment initially, it does make a lot of sense, to be fair.
No, that's fair enough. And our Liverpool support and boss Joe Rimmond has told me to stop complaining on the stream as well. So,
what do you think?
I get it. I get it now that you've thought about it. I just think you're just not going to know what's going to happen. We could be in a relegation battle. We could be mid-table and anything, like nothing's riding on it. We could be challenging for Europe. Either way, all we know is that now it's not going to change. Obviously, Chris said the fixture could potentially end up being lined up in between that. But we know now that the final ever game at Goodison Park is at Southampton. Date subject to change potentially, but we know that 18th of May, which is, I told you before we came in here, my daughter's birthday, so she's going to be 5, so I'm going to have to do a bit of negotiating with the missus. And but Chris came up with a fantastic idea.
Get me to say it, yeah.
Well, you can do.
No, yeah, why not? I have a toffee lady mascot for that final game at Goodison. She might have a bit of competition there, but we're getting it in early, aren't we? Request 11 months in advance.
We'll see.
Do it for Ian. Make his day. Make his year.
I'll do some sucking up to the club and see what happens. Or I'll let you two do it for me.
There's no sucking up to the club here. I think hopefully people have realised that over the course of the last few years. Everything's fair and balanced and even and equitable.
That's fine. Then.
Even if we're trying to get out of birthday celebrations, Ian and Gay. So
I'm sure she won't mind me going. Right, so serious business then.
Back,
no, I was just going to say it might get moved to the Sunday, mightn't it? The 19th.
Yeah, it might Sunday. It might end up on the Monday evening or something like that. Yeah. I need to just double check. I think it might actually be FA Cup weekend that weekend.
Okay.
The FA Cup final.
Okay, you might be right.
So I mean, if it gets moved because Everton in the FA Cup final, then we'll take that, wouldn't we?
We would.
Imagine that, win the FA Cup on the weekend, and then Southampton on the Thursday with
Joe's
the trophy paraded around there.
Fantasy football now, isn't he?
I'll take that. I'll take that all day. Absolutely. Serious business then, Joe. Let's have key dates, key fixtures. We mentioned Everton are home against Brighton first off. Are you happy with that? I'm not happy because I'm away, so I'm going to be missing it. I'm obviously not happy at all.
You haven't really got your commitment, your priorities right, have you?
No, I have not.
I've not got much sympathy there for you. Yeah, Brighton. Look, I mean, we spend forever speculating about what states different clubs are going to be. I remember when Brighton came last season, and it being really kind of nervous when they came, and Everton actually put up a really good fight and only conceded a late equaliser. That really unfortunate deflection from Ashley Young that kind of looped in over Pickford at the very end of the game. And I remember they're coming away from that being as it was a week before we went down to Crystal Palace and got that great win. Obviously Mikalenko scored early in both of those games, and I can remember coming away from that Brighton home match thinking and it was always one of them really frustrating ones from my perspective, from a professional perspective, where the late goal just sucks the life out of everyone, and nobody really wants to read after it because of disappointment. Because my takeaway from it, and obviously this was before that great run, it kick-started December with the 4 consecutive wins. It was just as the season was starting to gear up for Everton after a really slow start, and I can remember just seeing watching that Brighton game and how well Everton had played in it, and contrasting that to what had happened the previous January when Brighton smashing Everton around Goodison Park was probably the nadir of that season. It'd be that or Newcastle. I'm thinking that was as frustrating as it was to lose out on those 2 points late on. It felt like a real sign of progress that Everton had, wasn't always exciting, but got to a position where they could compete with sides like Brighton as they were. And obviously, Brighton have got a new manager now. I'm not sure if they appointed a new manager yet.
I don't think they have, no.
But obviously, De Zerbi's gone. They'll have another summer where, some of their players will be eyed up by teams looking to strengthen their own squad. So it's difficult to know what state they're going to be in. But yeah, I like having the first game of the season at home. It always gives you a chance to. This is a chance. It definitely gives Everton a chance to have a good start to the season. Brighton will be difficult opponents. Whoever's in charge and whoever's on the pitch.
Well, I was just going to say actually, it's done. It's Fabian Hürzeler, and he's the youngest ever Premier League manager. He's 31 years of age.
Yeah. So there. So there we are. It gives Everton an opportunity to start on the front foot, I think. So that's good. The key period for me, I don't know, have you talked about December yet?
Well, I know. I was going to say, you mentioned we need to get off to a good start, so we've got an absolute dreaded December and a dreaded April as well.
Yeah, to be fair, I probably haven't paid April the attention it deserves.
I think April's worse than December, but if you want to go on to December first.
Well, December, so you've got 6 games in 26 days as it stands, obviously scheduled to TV things and stuff like that. Which will be a repeat of Dyche's criticisms of the way in which they kind of load up December and then have a quieter January. Although this January there's 4 Premier League games and there'll be FA Cup fixtures within then as well. So that'll be quite busy too. But yeah, that December game, I hate referring to them as the Big Six, the Sky Six, I think we'll call them when we all just, I don't know. But that little run, obviously, start of the month with Wolves at home, which is okay. Yeah. And then it's, last ever derby at Goodison, and then Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, City away. That's 4 clubs that will hope to be competing at the very top of the Premier League all in a row, all just before Christmas. Yeah. that's got the potential to be it will be a very, very tough little schedule. And then when you bear in mind that it's Man United away on the 30th of November. So if you go along those, the Sky Six, that's 5 of the 6 in 6 games. So I mean that is brutal. Yeah. I mean, the one I've just written a piece on it, and the one thing I was saying or trying to draw hope to is the fact that Everton had quite a daunting December this time round, and they made really light work of it.
Yeah, we mentioned that, didn't we?
Yeah, really. That was December was probably the high point of the season for Everton, at least up until April when they had that amazing run of three wins in a week. When you look back at December, that was when they had those. They just come off the back of that 10-point deduction, plunged into another relegation battle result because the form had picked up a lot previously. And they looked like they were destined for mid-table. Then they had those 10 points taken off them. Then they had that kind of really just sucker punch defeat to Man United, didn't they? Where it was I just remember Goodison just all pitched up to be this cauldron of ferocity after the deduction. Us against the world. And then Garnacho goes and pulls out that incredible goal. So we haven't played well. I mean, they still don't really understand how they didn't get that level in that game, but. After that, they then had that incredible December where they won the 4 games in a row. Forest, Burnley, obviously Newcastle and Chelsea. I know they both ended up, and obviously Chelsea qualified for Europe. They both were mid-table for most of the season. And they just both finished it strongly. But at the time, we were still judging them on past exploits and obviously the talented players they've got. And Everton just brushed them aside. They were brilliant in both of those games. And obviously they saw off Burnley and got a really good win at Forest on it was freezing. Wasn't it cold?
Yeah, I think didn't Everton actually go into that game bottom of the table because of the results earlier in the day?
So they had them 4 games, and then obviously it was in mid-December when they got the Burnley win was the last one in the league for basically for five months.
Burnley at home,
So Burnley at home, 4.5 months later or so. But although the wheels did fall off, they didn't fall off in that December because after the Burnley win, they had I'll ignore the Fulham Carabao Cup game. But they went to Spurs and they lost 2-1 and I still think the Spurs defeat. I think that was one of their best performances of last season. Yeah. They were brilliant.
Sean Dyche concurs.
They were brilliant. And I remember just went 2-0 down early on. Garnagay goes off after 25 minutes. Andre Gomez goes back on, comes on. First appearance of the season. First appearance in competitive football for Dyche and just completely changed the game. And obviously had the Dominic Calvert-Lewin disallowed goal, didn't they? I mean, Gomez still scored. This was earlier on in the game, but I still can't for the life of me understand why Onana didn't get a penalty. And especially when Kulusevski did the same thing 4 or 5 days later and got penalised for it. And, there you are trying to kind of listen to the Premier League squirm as they say, oh, that was right and that was wrong and that was right and that was right, and even though they're 2 opposite things. But you had that. Really good performance. They were unlucky, and then it was City. I mean, City. We seem to be locked in Christmas fixtures with City, don't we? I think that's
a lot of people have said that. In the chat.
But I mean, but Everton have done well in certainly the 2 that I've covered. They lost. Was it 3-1 to City? But they played really well in that game. Obviously, took the lead, and I'm not going to make the argument they deserved anything from the game necessarily. City clicked into gear, and were very good, weren't they? That second half performance by City was up there with the best I think we saw against Everton last season. But again, they got back into the game through that penalty, and I still think it was harsh. A handball against Amadou Onana, I think the goals would have come and things like that. But again, that was a very tricky December with a very small squad in playing under very, very difficult circumstances, and they did very well. So, hopefully, I mean, and I think you were saying this like coming. Hopefully, what Everton do, which they didn't do in the very first stages of last season, is get points on the board early to take the pressure off, and then no such fingers, free hits, etc., etc. But hopefully they'll be able to take on those games properly and get something out of them. Because otherwise, you just end up in that really difficult. If you end up on a bad run going into the new year, or you just feel it just increases the pressure on a January transfer window and things like that, which might be the first transfer window under new ownership. Which would be interesting to see what impact that has if a deal finally gets over the line for on that case. So, there are lots of different narratives there. But that December to me just is one of those. It feels like it could be a really, really special final Christmas at Goodison if Everton can put up a fight in those games, as we know that they can do. But it also just has that that has the potential just to be one of them really frustrating months where you just can't quite get going, and
Injuries play a part.
Injuries play a part, and I think that's a month that I look at, and I think that almost that December will be the first proper test by which we can judge Everton's summer by. When obviously they'll end the transfer window. We know that they're not going to be able to do a huge amount in terms of expenditure or spending going out. We know they're going to sell players. The big challenge for Farwell and Deitch is to somehow create a stronger squad on a budget, and I think their best opportunity to do that is probably less by bringing in 8, 9 out of 10 players. They don't have the money for that. It's bringing in the squad 6 out of 7, 10. The ambition would ideally be that Deitch, I think last season probably had 13, 14 players at most that you felt he could trust. If you could increase that to 18, 19, and or even just 16, 17 players that can come in, notice this, and Deitch can trust them, then that would make Everton a stronger and probably more capable of going through periods like that. But what I am, just to finish off on this point, where I am pleased is that of those 4 games, that Liverpool is the first one, so that Everton can go into that probably the freshest they will be during that run. Obviously they've been to Man United, then they'll have hosted Wolves. They've got to run into that Liverpool game, the final derby at Goodison. Whereas if, say, for instance, that had been the second, or if it had been the third or the fourth in that run, you could just see where it could be a little bit wearisome if they'd have, gone to Arsenal, and things rarely go well at Arsenal.
Can I just actually say, just a little interjection here? The Belgium handball last night, the second goal disallowed.
I didn't see it.
Lukaku had 2 goals disallowed for Belgium last night, and the second one was because of a handball in the build-up.
Okay.
And it was like, fair enough, but just Arsenal away, and it just made me think of Gabriel Jesus' last game of the season. It's like, oh no, it stands. But yeah, it was just interesting, and I think that the VAR has actually been a lot better at the Euros, and a lot quicker at least.
But yeah, so I mean, if Everton had gone to Arsenal, maybe just had a difficult defeat, and then played City or Chelsea, and perhaps played really well, but just perhaps got a little bit outclassed, and then you go into the derby, and you're going into the derby a little bit more frustrated, aren't you? A little bit wary, a little more kind of
pressure's on. Maybe.
Pressure's on. At least this way they get to take the derby on first out of those big games.
Okay, well. We'll probably finish off in a minute because we're coming up close to the hour. There's a lot to come on the Liverpool Echo website from Chris and Joe. If you haven't read the pieces already, go to the Liverpool Echo website and read the piece. And Joe, have you done an explainer piece on the reason why we're not?
I've done it. I've been speaking to contacts or whatever, and that's my understanding. And I can understand people's disappointment because it's one that I felt as well. Like last night, it was. I hope the last game of the season is at Goodison. I hope the last game, the same this morning when 7 o'clock or so came, and the Southampton penultimate game of the season. I was a bit disappointed, but I do think that if you just take a step back and let your head rule your heart a little bit, this actually probably gives a far greater chance for. I certainly think what it does do is, and bearing in mind that a crucial part of Everton moving forward under whatever new owners come in is trying to establish itself kind of back among football's elite and kind of make the world of football outside of our bubble more aware of Everton again. They should be, but Everton's fortunes haven't been particularly great over recent years, and their efforts to build on their reputation and heritage haven't been as successful as a result. But an opportunity here to have the eyes of the world on Everton. Obviously you never know quite what's going to happen and how seasons are going to unfold, and fixture lists are all subject to change, everything like that. But I definitely think that we don't know what the status at both ends of the Premier League table is going to be on May the 25th. But what we do know is someone's going to win the title. 3 teams are going to go down. There's going to be a big bun fight for European football, including Champions League football. 4 of the games will probably be on TV all at the same time. So the one thing, whilst there are unknowns, the one thing that we did know is that outside of our world, the story of Goodison and its final game would have been overshadowed by other events whether we liked it or not, whether we thought they were worthy events or not. That definitely would have happened on that Sunday afternoon. This gives Everton the chance to kind of have their own say and go, you know what, like, we are the story this weekend or this day. This, and it's and for there haven't been enough of these times, and it's a positive story. Look at one of the most famous venues in football. We're giving it a proper send off. You watch us because we deserve your attention.
Chris, I'll give you your final say as well now. Then, so, and I mean afterwards, if you want to give a plug for Derek Temple as well. I think it's too early really to go on to April. It is a dreaded run in April as well as December, obviously. But the first couple of games, say like the first sixth, where you're looking at Everton picking up points, or where we should be picking up points, because if we don't pick up points within them first, like say 6 to 10 games, as Joe mentioned, it's going to be a really difficult period towards the end of November and December, isn't it?
Well, I'm just looking at the fixtures in front of me now, and I think you've got. You could put a strong case. Well, looking at all those fixtures going all the way, the home fixtures up until the derby, they're all winnable. Look, Brighton home, Bournemouth home, Palace home, Newcastle home, won that last season, Fulham home, Brentford home, Wolverhampton Wanderers home. So I'm not saying that they are going to win them all, but they are all winnable fixtures. I've seen some tougher ones on the road. Tottenham Hotspur away, so I've seen a tough one. Aston Villa away, they got battered there in August, but then went on, produced a marvellous display in the Carabao Cup. I think it was one of Villa's very few home defeats there, just a month or so later. And Leicester City away, newly promoted, and we've discussed what issues they might have, and then Ipswich away, Southampton away, West Ham away, which is a fixture where Everton have actually done well in traditionally. So maybe I'm not going to go like full circle, go 180 degrees from you, but there is an opportunity to get points on the board earlier. We discussed like last season, it was really bad, wasn't it, the way they started, not necessarily in the performances, but in terms of the results, taking those chances, Sean Dyche going on about the XG and all that lot. We just want to avoid that and just get off to a decent start. Certainly, there are periods, be it in December or April, where you're like, I don't like the look of that. But nothing to be concerned of. You've got respect to all opponents in the Premier League without getting too cliche. But plenty of winnable fixtures for a well-organised Everton outfit in that first period of the season. Before my voice goes, Sean, Derek Temple, of course, man who knows Goodison Park as well as anybody, really. He's our latest one, Goodison Park, my home. We had him in yesterday. We've got that one coming up in the coming days. Absolutely marvellous, wasn't he? He's 86 later this year. He's still sharp as a tack. I'd actually watched it last night at half-time during the France game, put YouTube on, watched the highlights from the 66 Cup final. See the young Derek there. I discussed that. I mean, it was a horrible chance in that he had so much time to think about it when he's 1-on-1 and the keeper slotted it away. But yeah, that's a really interesting one, and he spoke very candidly, didn't he, about the people who he played alongside, other players, the managers he played under as well. So hopefully that's one to look forward to for all Blues.
Not often that you get to meet an FA Cup winning goal scorer from 1966. He was really good, wasn't he? And we will have further updates on when that is going to be released and published. Joe, final word for you then. I guess my question is, final season at Goodison Park, whatever way you're going to look at it, it's going to be emotional. Obviously, the further the season goes, it's going to be emotional. Is it important that we don't put too much emotion into this season? Because, it can be a detriment, can't it, if you look at that? And I'd say is the Goodison Park form at home this season, is that going to be key to keeping Everton away from trouble?
I don't think it can be anything other than emotional, and I think, to be honest, Goodison is at its very best when it's emotional. That's what makes it so special. The fact that the atmosphere there feels so personal. It feels like when a team comes, they're stepping into your backyard, and you don't get that atmosphere at lots of other places. So I actually think that that team and that squad, Sean Dyche obviously they always had the fans behind them, but they'll have an awful amount of goodwill behind them next season and desperation for them to do well. And I think it's incumbent on them to harness that. They struggled to do it last season for large parts. Goodison, we want it to be a fortress. If Everton are going to have a successful season, if they're going to have a positive season, the home form certainly needs to be better than it was last year, even though obviously you had the deducted points in, and they still would have been pushing for top half. So it's an area where they can make big gains on what they did last year. There's some really disappointing defeats at home. So I think the hope would be that the players are able to relish the fact that they're in a little period of history, and every time they step out onto that pitch next season, they'll be making a little bit of history, and hopefully they can they can harness the emotion of that and use it positively, because Goodison is just it's a special place, and like I say, I think it's at its best when it's emotional. I think there'll be a huge amount of that next season.
Just one final question, because this is not really me. It was a question from our stream. Are we expecting a Goodison Park friendly before the season starts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have thought so. I don't quite know what it is, but they typically the last friendly pre-season tends to be at Goodison, doesn't it? I mean, the last few years it's been the only friendly at Goodison, but that's normally what they do, I think. So, obviously it's not just for fans to pick up new kits and parade new signings and things like that, but obviously it's also important to the preparations for the staff who work games, etc., as they prepare for a new season as well. So yeah, I'd expect that there will be more pre-season games announced, and they'll be going on a camp. We pretty confident. It looks like it's going to be Ireland, but it's yet to be formally announced just yet. I'm not entirely sure why, but as I say, those announcements will come when they do. We've got those 3 games, but there will be having a camp somewhere, and there will be I would be very, very surprised anyway if there isn't a Goodison Park pre-season friendly.
Plenty of Guinness for Joe then in Ireland when he goes over.
Yeah,
if you do go over.
Might help the copy to come out a bit more smoothly.
Anything else then to finish off with? Before
you know what? Chris is having a little giggle here. You were just saying about him there being with an FA Cup winning goal scorer, and I just think, the people this man keeps company with, because you were a World Cup winner last week as well, weren't you?
As well, though.
Probably a few FA Cup winners in that crowd as well, weren't there?
There was. Yeah, there was moonlighting with Tottenham Hotspur. But no, let's keep them coming. Like we said, on a more serious note, as we said yesterday, obviously gutted as well. We wanted to get Kevin Campbell on there, which obviously never happened now. But long may they continue. It should be a time of celebration, like we said. The final season at Goodison Park, with so much strife in recent seasons, the 2 very much real relegation battles of the previous 2 years, and then obviously things were looking pretty hairy until we got to those 3 home games at the end of April. So let's just hope it can get the turbulence on and off the field behind Everton for the final season at Goodison Park, and enjoy this once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Definitely. Well, it's never a dull day, lads, is it? Let's face it.
Never a dull day, no.
Never a dull day. We've got obviously transfers, ingoings, outgoings to come over the next couple of weeks. We've got any further stadium updates. We'll have pre-season friendlies. We'll have the ownership update. Plenty more to come. And we're going to be back on Friday, I think, for a pod. I've got Gavin Friday, so I'm hoping that you two can take the reins as well, and I'll happily produce the pod while you two jump on with Gav, because I'm sure Gav will want to talk about the fixtures as well as potentially pay a tribute, his own tribute to Super Kev as well. Yeah. So that'll be a really good one on Friday. So stay tuned for that one. I've been Ian Croll, with Joe Thomas, with Chris Beesley, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.